Exactly as we, the French, did at the Renaissance, copying the Italians, and then in the 19th century, all European countries did the same, copying the British. So nothing new under the sun. The Japanese did the same 40 years ago, and then that's the turn of the Chinese.
So is it fair to say that the Chinese government has been too lax when it comes to defending Western intellectual property rights within China?
This is not a country where the rule of law applies. I mean, it's a fresh country. I mean, nothing existed 20 years ago. So you have to imagine what was the China 20 years ago. So it's they will learn and they will comply with the common rule of the game of globalization, but not too quickly.
What do you say about the efforts of the Chinese government so far in this field? Are they consciously trying to crack down now, and are they doing so well enough?
Depends on the sector. For example, when Lenovo, a Chinese champion, took over the IBM PCs a few years ago, then Lenovo decided to put on the PCs the official Microsoft Windows and not the fake. And then the government, the Chinese government, followed up to crack down on the fake of the software. So when there is a national champion at stake, I mean a Chinese champion, then something begins to happen.
But are you saying that this is incentive to save face, perhaps, for Chinese companies, that doesn't exist across the board?
No, that doesn't exist across the board. And it's patriotic even to catch up with the West in copying the West. So it's not exactly the way counterfeiting and rule of law is considered in the West.
But is it fair then to say that Chinese companies, they're learning from plagiarizing, that they will, as you say, catch up with Western companies in the future? And is it a conscious effort on the behalf of the Chinese government to let them plagiarize and let them learn?
Oh, there is a vital pulse in China which produces the 11% growth rate a year. So you have to imagine that begin with the Chinese companies and not only with the foreign companies. So every time a Chinese company creates a shop or a factory, there is clones on the countryside 3 weeks later. So this is really the economic war. And the Chinese companies, the Chinese engineers are catching up very fast. They learn very fast, and they are able to get the value added very fast.
If we turn then to the car industry specifically, how far is China from having its own domestic, homegrown domestic car industry that has the capabilities to do research in the same way as Western companies are doing?
Yes, of course. I mean, remember 30 years ago we said that the Japanese would never be able to build a car. I mean, look where are the Japanese now, and we said exactly the same with the Koreans 15 years ago. So now that's the turn of the Chinese, and well, there have been already cases of counterfeiting with the cars. I mean, remember the Chery QQ copying the Chevrolet Spark a few years ago, so nothing new. Probably in 10 years' time, the Chinese car factories will be as good as those in the West, and 20 years' time, maybe they will compete with Airbus. Who knows?
In what other sectors do we see this kind of problem? I'm guessing it's not just restricted to the auto industry.
Everywhere, from luxury goods to consumer products, everywhere. That's really a nightmare in many consumer sectors with the piracy of the Chining's companies.
So basically across the board, any type of product, electronics and so on and so forth.
Any kind of products, even growingly the sophisticated products as well.
What can European companies do to protect themselves? I mean, China's a huge market, so they still want to go into the country and this growing economy. But what can they do to make sure that they won't fall prey, so to speak, to companies, Chinese companies that plagiarize?
China is creating 10 times more wealth additionally every year than France, so the market is there, clearly. So every Western company is rushing into the Chinese market. So the way to protect themselves is to be ahead of the mob. That is to be a step forward than the Chinese company, and perhaps also not to delocalize the up-to-date technologies. So it's a permanent race to be ahead of the mob.
Now, what kind of support do Western companies and European companies receive from their respective governments? Is it enough?
Well, the respective government, they may, try to enforce the rule of law in China in the multilateral institution, but that's not much. So basically, the Western company, they are supported by their embassies from time to time, but basically they have to do the job themselves.
But they're walking a fine line, just to be briefly for us. I mean, they don't want to make the Chinese lose face, so to speak.
Well, that's China. I mean, every time you pass a message in private, that's perfectly okay. When you try to make advertising out of that, or to make the Chinese lose face in public, that's then becomes the problem.
All right, Jacques Gravreau from the business school HEC here in France. Thank you very much for coming to our studios. And that's the end of this edition of Beyond Business. We'll be back again soon with more on the state of play in the globalized economy. Until then, stay with us here at France 24. And don't forget, you can get more business news on our website. The address, as usual, is www.france24.com.
Beyond Business, presented by Grassroots.